Hello. Ooh, do we have some exciting chapters today? We're reading two chapters today, chapters 5 and 6. There is some interesting, I was going to say fun. It's not necessarily fun, but packed with excitement. Let's look at our vocab words. We've got pewter, which is a type of silver, okay? It's a type of metal. It's silver colored, but a type of metal. We have breechcloth. That's what the Native Americans wear, you know, kind of covers their bathing suit area. Incomprehensible, that means you can't understand it. Okay, comprehensible, you can understand it. Incomprehensible, you don't get it. Persuade, that means you're talking somebody into something. Astonishingly, it's surprising, okay? And then treaty is an agreement that's made between people. It's usually on paper and a signed thing that's saying, okay, we agree to this. It's like a peace agreement that they've reached, okay? All right, so chapter 5, let's see. Remember chapter 4, the bear incident? Yikes. Yikesies. So Matt is left, if you remember, left with very little. He's got a fishing line, and that's about it. That's about the only way he has to get any food at all. So let's see how he's handling all that. I wonder, what do you think? Do you think he's holding up okay? I hope so. But he's only 12. Yikes. All right, chapter 5 is on page 22. Day after day, he kept remembering the bee tree. He and his father had discovered it weeks ago. High in a tree at the swampy edge of the pond they had called Loon Pond, the bees were buzzing in and out of an old woodpecker hole. Matt had thought they were wild bees, but his father said no, there were no bees at all in America. This is interesting. There were no bees at all in America till the colonists brought them from England. This swarm must have escaped from one of the river towns. Bees were better left alone, Pa said. Now, that's a good piece of advice Pa has. Bees are better left alone. How many of you go out and try to catch bees? I hope not. That's probably not going to end too well for you. Don't say that I said to do that, for heaven's sakes. He felt he could scarcely endure another meal of plain fish, so he's just sick and tired of eating fish. Blech. He probably would rather just not even eat. He was hungry for a bit of something tasty. Knowing so well his fondness for molasses, his mother had persuaded them to carry that little keg all the way to Maine when his father would rather have gone without. So you know how moms are. Mom's like, well, my baby likes molasses. Please take this little keg with you because Matt just loves molasses. And what happened to the molasses? The bears got it. Maine, let's see, she would have smiled to see him running his finger round and round the empty keg like a child licking off the last drop the bear had missed. Now he couldn't stop thinking about that honey. It would be worth a sting or two just to have a taste of it. There couldn't be much danger in going up that tree and taking just a little, a cupful perhaps. Perhaps that the bees would never miss. One morning he made up his mind to try it, come what might. So he's feeling a little bit brave. He's like, I think I'm gonna try to go get some honey. It was an easy tree to climb with branches as neatly placed as the rungs of a ladder. The bees did not seem to notice as he pulled himself higher and higher. Even when his head was on a level with the hole, they flew lazily in and out, not paying him any mind at all. The hole was small, not big enough for his hand, and the spoon he had brought with him. Peering in, he could just glimpse, just get a little peek far inside, the golden mass of honeycomb. The bark all around the hole was rotted and crumbling. Cautiously, he put his fingers on the edge and gave a slight tug. A good-sized piece of bark broke off into his hand. With it came the bees. With a furious buzzing, they came pouring from the broken hole. The humming grew to a roar like a great wind. Matt felt a sharp pain on his neck, then another and another. The angry creatures swarmed along his hands and bare arms, in his hair, on his face. How he got down out of that tree, he never remembered. Water! If he could reach water, he could escape them, because bees don't like water. Bellowing and waving his arms, he plunged toward the pond. The bees were all around him. He could not see through the whirling cloud of them. The boggy ground, boggy meaning it's like muddy and kind of, just kind of sucks you down. Oh, the boggy ground sucked at his feet. He pulled one foot clear out of his boot, went stumbling over sharp roots, to the water's edge, and flung himself forward. His foot caught in a fallen branch, and he wrenched it clear. Dazed with pain, he sank down into the icy shelter of the water. So not only has he been stung a lot by these bees, he has hurt his foot, but it got caught in this root of a tree. He came up choking. Just above the water, the angry bees circled. Twice more he ducked his head and held it down till his lungs were bursting. He tried to swim out into the pond, but his feet were tangled in dragging weeds. When he tried to jerk them free, a fierce pain ran up his leg and he went under again, thrashing his arms wildly. Then something lifted him. His head came up from the water, and he gulped air into his aching lungs. He felt strong arms around him. Half conscious, he dreamed that his father was carrying him, and he did not wonder how this could be. Presently he knew he was lying on dry ground. Though his eyelids were swollen almost shut because of all the bee stings, he could see two figures bending over him, unreal, half-naked figures with dark faces. Then, as his wits began to return to him, he saw that they were Indians, an old man and a boy. The man's hands were reaching for his throat, and in panic, Matt tried to jerk away. Now, if somebody's hands are coming for your throat, you're probably worried that they're going to strangle you. And he's thinking, he's not sure about these Native Americans, and he's thinking, yikes, what are they going to do? Not move, a deep voice ordered. Bee needles have poison. Must get out. Matt was too weak to struggle. He could not even lift his head. Now that he was out of the cold water, his skin seemed to be on fire from head to toe, yet he could not stop shivering. He had to lie helpless while the man's hands moved over his face and neck and body. Gradually, he realized that they were gentle hands, probing and rubbing at one tender spot after another. His panic began to die away. So this man is getting the needles out all over Matt's body, but he said even though they're strong hands, they're very gentle and just not hurting him at all, being very calm and gentle. He could still not think clearly. Things seemed to keep fading before he could quite grasp them. He could not protest when the man lifted him again and carried him like a baby. It did not seem to matter where they were taking him, but shortly he found himself lying on his own bed in his own cabin. He was alone. The Indians had gone. He lay too tired and sore to figure out how he came to be there, knowing only that the nightmare of whirling bees and choking water was past and that he was safe. Some time passed, then once again the Indian was bending over him, holding a wooden spoon against his lips. He swallowed in spite of himself, meaning he didn't want to swallow. He didn't mean, he wasn't sure what was going on, but he swallowed it anyway. Even when he found it was not food, but some bitter medicine. He was left alone again, and presently he slept. So the Indians have gone away. Matt is there sleeping. They've apparently given him some kind of medicine, gotten the needles out of his body to help get the poison from all that's a lot of bee stings, okay? So he's unsure of the Native Americans. He's just not quite sure how to feel about them. But he just feels so poorly that he doesn't really care. I mean, he's like he can't walk well. He's had all these bee stings, and they seem to be taking pretty good care of him. So he's like, all right, I don't even care, whatever. I just, I guess you're okay. All right, chapter 6. We're going to go ahead and read. This is one of the few times we're going to do two chapters instead of just one, okay? So chapter 6. So keep in mind, you picturing Matt, he's in his cabin on his bed in bad shape, okay? So page 26. Finally, Matt woke and knew that he was well. His body was no longer on fire. He could open his eyes, and he saw that sunlight glinted through the chinks in the roof. All his familiar things were around him. The shelves with the pewter dishes, his jacket hanging on a peg. He felt as though he had been on a long journey and had come home. He must have slept through a half a day and a night. When the cabin door opened and the Indian entered, Matt hastily pulled himself up. He's like, yikes, what's the Indian doing here? Now, with clear eyes, he saw that there was nothing in the least strange about this man. He seemed like a perfectly normal man. He was dressed not so differently from Matt's own father, in a coat of some rough brown cloth and leggings fringed down the side. His face was smooth shaven, and so was his whole head, except for one long black top knot. When he saw that Matt was awake, his stern face was lighted by a wide smile. So he doesn't have any whiskers. His head is mostly shaven except for a patch of hair at the top of his head, which I think he kind of has up in like a little knot. Good. It was a half word, half grunt. White boy, very sick. Now well. Matt remembered his father's advice. Do you remember what Matt's father had said if he came across a Native American? He said, treat him respectfully, treat him as if he were a deacon, a man in the church. You want to show politeness. Okay, that was Matt's father's advice, which was probably good advice to give him, seeing that he's coming in contact with the Native Americans. I'm going to repeat that. Matt remembered his father's advice. Good morning, he said respectfully. The Indian pointed a hand at his own chest. Sockness, family of Beaver, he said. He seemed to be waiting. I'm Matthew Hollowell, Matt answered. Good. White man leave you here? Just for a while, Matt told him. He has gone to get my mother. It did not occur to him to lie to this old man as he had to Ben. Moreover, he knew that there was something he had to say. He tried to find the right words. Now, remember, when he met Ben, he didn't feel very comfortable with Ben, and he lied to him about his father. He said, yeah, he's just gone out. He'll be back real soon. But to Sockness, he said, yeah, my dad's gone to get, my pa's gone to get the rest of my family. I'm here alone. And he feels comfortable telling him that. He feels safe with Sockness. And then he remembers he wanted to say something. I'm grateful to you, he said finally. It was a very lucky thing you happened to find me. We watch. White boy very foolish to climb bee tree. So he had been right, Matt thought, that eyes were watching him from the forest. Remember, he always kind of felt like somebody was watching him? Well, he was right. It was these Native Americans. He was sure that the Indian had not asked him where he lived. They had brought him straight home to his cabin. Even though he knew it was his good fortune they'd been watching him yesterday, he still felt somewhat resentful of their spying, meaning he didn't really like that. Abruptly, he swung his feet to the floor and winced as a sharp pain ran up his leg, so his ankle's still bugging him. The Indian noticed, and moving closer, he took Matt's ankle between his hands and pressed gently with his fingers. Is it broken? Matt asked. Nah, not broke. Mend soon. Sleep now. Not need medicine more. The Indian had put something on the table as he came in. When he had gone, Matt hobbled over to see what it was and found a wooden bowl of stew, thick and greasy, flavored with some strange plant, wonderfully filling and strengthening. With it there was a cake of cornbread, coarser than his own, but delicious. The next day, the Indian brought the boy with him. Let me back up to that paragraph right there. So the Indian, Sockness, brought him a bowl of stew and some cornbread. Now, you know, Matt, remember, he's been eating fish for quite a while. He's like, yum, this delicious stew. So he loved it. The next day, the Indian brought the boy with him. Nequanis, you call grandson, he announced. Etienne. So Sockness has brought his grandson with him, and his grandson's name is Etienne. The two boys stared at each other. The Indian boy's black eyes held no expression whatever. Unlike the old man, he was naked except for a breechcloth held up by a string at his waist. It passed between his legs and hung down like a little apron, front and back and front. His heavy black hair fell straight to his shoulders. Etienne, same winter as white boy, maybe? What do you think that means? The same winter as the white boy. Right, it's about that, meaning maybe you're about the same age, he's thinking. The man asked. He held up 10 fingers and then 4 more, meaning Etienne is 14. Do you remember how old Matt is? I'm 13, Matt answered, holding up his own fingers. At least, he excused himself, that would be true in another week. So technically he's still 12, but his birthday will be in about a week and he'll be 13. So they're about the same age. The Indian boy did not speak a word. Quite plainly, he had been brought here against his will. So the Etienne doesn't want to be there. He stared about the cabin and seemed to despise means hate, everything he saw. He made Matt feel like a fool, sitting with his leg propped up on a stool. Matt steadied himself on his good leg and stood up. Now he noticed that Sockness was holding out to him a rough sort of crutch. Matt wished he did not have to try it right now with both of them watching him, but he could see that the man expected it. He managed a few steps, furious at his own clumsiness. He had never imagined how pesky a crutch could be. Moreover, although there was not the slightest change in the boy's face, Matt was sure that Etienne was laughing at him. There was a nasty little gleam in the boy's eyes. So the two boys, they're not getting along very well. The moment they were gone, he seized the crutch in earnest, and very soon he could swing himself along at a good brisk pace. Now he was able to get about outside the cabin to check the corn patch and bring in firewood. The trouble was, he had only one boot. Remember, he lost his boot in the swampy bog? The woolen stocking his mother had knit for him was wearing thin. On the rough ground, it wore through in no time. This, too, the Indian noticed when he came with his grandson next morning. No boot, he said, pointing. I lost it, Matt answered. It came off in the mud when I ran. Once again, he felt ridiculous under the Indian boy's black stare. 3 days later, Sockness brought him a pair of moccasins. They were handsome and new, of moose hide, dark and glistening with grease, tied with stout thongs that were long enough to wrap around his ankles. So a moccasin, if you're not sure what that is, it's made of animal skin, very soft, feels good on your feet. Not exactly a slipper because it's leather all around, so it wears pretty well outside. But it feels almost like he's barefoot, although he's given plenty of support by the leather to protect his feet. Beaver woman make, Sockness said. Better white man's boots, white boy see. So Sockness is saying, these moccasins, they are better than your boots. You'll see. Matt took off his one boot and slipped on the moccasin. Oh, indeed, they were better. In fact, they were wonderful. Not stiff like new leather boots, not knobby or pinching anywhere, light as nothing at all when he lifted his feet. No wonder Indians did not make a sound when they walked in the forest. Shame suddenly flooded over Matt. This man had perhaps saved his life, had come bringing food and a crutch, and now these beautiful moccasins. So Matt's feeling a little bit guilty because Sockness is just doing so many things for him. It wasn't enough just to say an awkward thank you. He needed to give something in return. Not money. There were a few silver coins in the tin box, but something made him very sure that he could not offer money to this proud old man. He looked about him in despair. There was almost nothing of his own in this cabin. Then he spied the 2 books on the shelf, the only 2 his father had been able to carry into the wilderness. One was the Bible. He dared not give away his father's Bible. The other book was his own, the only one he had ever possessed, Robinson Crusoe. He had read it a dozen times, and the thought of parting with it was painful, but it was the only thing he had to give. He hobbled across the room and took it down from the shelf and held it out to the Indian. So Matt hates to give this book away. It's the only thing he owns, but he feels like he has to give them something. They've done so much. Sockness stared at it. It's for you, Matt said. It's a gift. Please take it. Sockness reached out and took the book in his hand. He turned it over and over slowly, his face showing not a sign of pleasure. Then he opened it and stood peering at the page. With shame, Matt saw that he was holding it upside down. So Sockness is looking at the book, but it's upside down. But Sockness doesn't know that. He couldn't read. Oh, of course he couldn't. Matt should have known that. He had made a terrible mistake and embarrassed the good man. He had heard once that one thing an Indian could never forgive was a hurt to his pride. He felt his own face burning. But Sockness did not look embarrassed. I don't even think he realizes that he has the book upside down. His dark stare went from the book to Matt's face. So Matt feels horrible that he's given him this book. You know, why did he think that Sockness could read an American book, you know? So, but luckily, I don't think Sockness knows. Let's see. But Sockness did not look embarrassed. His dark stare went from the book to Matt's face. White boy, no signs? He asked. Now, what do you think he's thinking? Does the white boy know signs? What do you think he's talking about? The words. He's asking, do you know how to read? Matt was puzzled. White boy read what white man write here? Yes, Matt admitted. I can read it. For a long moment, the Indian studied the book. Then, astonishingly surprised, that rare white smile flashed. So it's kind of unusual for Sockness to smile. Good, he grunted. Sockness make treaty. A treaty. So he's going to make an agreement, okay? A treaty? Matt was even more puzzled. Nequinus, hunt. Bring white boy bird and rabbit. White boy teach Etienne white man signs. So what does Sockness want? He wants Matt to teach his grandson, Etienne, how to read. You mean I should teach him to read? Good. White boy teach Etienne what books say. Doubtfully, Matt looked from the old man to the boy, who stood silently listening. His heart sank. Ugh. The scorn in the boy's face had turned to black anger. Now remember, the boys don't care for one another, okay? Nah, the furious word exploded. The first word Matt had ever heard him speak. Half under his breath, he muttered a string of incomprehensible words. His grandfather's stern face did not change. He was undisturbed by the boy's defiance. Etienne, learn, he said. So the grandfather doesn't care that Etienne doesn't want to learn how to read. The grandfather's like, too bad, you're going to learn how to read. Matt's going to teach you. Etienne, learn, he said. White man come more and more to Indian land. White man not make treaty with pipe. White man make signs on paper. Signs Indian not know. Indian put mark on paper to show him friend of white man. Then white man take land. Tell Indian cannot hunt on land. Etienne learn to read white man's signs. Etienne not give away hunting grounds. So when the white men came over, they had the Native Americans sign an agreement that said the land would be the white man's, that the Native Americans couldn't even hunt on it. But the Native Americans didn't realize that. They didn't know how to read. They thought they were friends. But the white men appear to be taking advantage of the Native Americans. And Sockness says, I don't want that. We need somebody that can read what the white man says. The boy glowered at his grandfather, but he did not dare to speak again. With a black scowl, he stalked out of the cabin. Good, said Sockness calmly. He handed the book back to Matt. Etienne come Seba tomorrow. And that's the end of chapter 6. So, whoosh, I mean, a lot has happened. They rescued Matt, took very good care of him, not only helping him to get better with medicine and sleep and getting the stingers out of his body, but they brought him food, they brought him moccasins, they brought him a crutch. And so Matt is like, how can I thank you? What can I do to say thank you to you? And Sockness and, Etienne doesn't say anything. Remember, he's just like, he's grumpy. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't like this white boy. But Sockness wants Matt to teach Etienne how to read. And so that's the agreement that they make, that Matt will teach Etienne how to read. Okay? Neither of the boys are happy about it, but that's what Sockness wants. Matt feels obligated to repay somehow. And Etienne is going to abide by what his grandfather says and do what he says, although he's not too happy about it. Okay, so you know what? I did not make up a sample chapter summary page for chapters 5 and 6. You can do those together, okay? If you just want to do one page. Now this one says chapter 4, so ignore that. But if it said chapter 5 and 6, you could put it on one page. What I wrote, now this is quite a bit to write, but here's how I summarized chapter 5. I said, Matt finds a beehive in a tree and gathers some honey to replace what was taken by the bear. Matt has an accident and has to be rescued by Indians. And then chapter 6, Matt begins to recover and feels he owes the Indians something for rescuing him, but he doesn't have anything. The Indian has an idea as to what Matt can do to help him. Okay, and then you could add to Sockness wants Matt to teach Etienne how to read. Okay, so you figure out how you want to word that. It'll probably take more sentences than normal because you're putting 2 chapters together. Okay, and then don't forget to illustrate the top. You can combine that somehow. There's a lot that you could draw there. Okay, you could do the bee tree. You could do the 3 of them in the cabin together. That's up to you. But do what helps you. Okay, because this is going to be to help your little memory when we get finished with the book. Then you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that chapter. Yeah. Okay. All right, it was good to be with you guys again. I hope you're doing great. I'm proud of you doing that. This is different, isn't it? It's different, but I know you're doing well. Your moms and dads have told me you're doing well. Be patient with them. Most of them aren't teachers. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. We've been doing this school thing long enough, so I've had you guys for 2 years now, so you know what I expect. Okay? All right, do your best. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.